Sometimes a grandmother's love is stronger than any disease that tries to steal it away. That's what 78-year-old Eleanor Williams proved when she stood at the Family Feud podium and gave an answer that stopped Steve Harvey mid-sentence, brought an entire studio to tears, and reminded millions of viewers that some bonds transcend memory itself. What happened in that moment would change everything anyone thought they knew about love, loss, and the power of holding on to what matters most, even when everything else begins to fade away. The morning had started with the familiar ritual that had become part of Eleanor Williams' daily routine since her Alzheimer's diagnosis 18 months ago. Her granddaughter Jessica sat beside her at the kitchen table in their modest apartment in Cleveland, Ohio, gently helping her grandmother remember the day's schedule, while Eleanor sipped her coffee from the same blue ceramic mug she had used every morning for the past 40 years. "Today's the big day, Grandma," Jessica said softly, her voice carrying the mixture of excitement and concern that had become her constant companion since moving in to care for Eleanor full-time. "We're going to Atlanta to be on Family Feud. Remember, you've been practicing your answers all week." Jessica had learned to speak in gentle, encouraging tones, avoiding any hint of frustration that might trigger Eleanor's anxiety. The woman who had once been her rock now required the same patient nurturing that Eleanor had provided to Jessica during the darkest period of her own life. Eleanor looked up from her coffee with eyes that sometimes held complete clarity and other times seemed to be searching for something just beyond reach. At 78, she had been a vibrant, independent woman who volunteered at the local food bank every Tuesday, maintained a garden that was the envy of her neighborhood, and never forgot a birthday, anniversary, or important moment in her family's life. She had been the family historian, the keeper of stories and traditions. But Alzheimer's disease had begun stealing pieces of her memory with cruel randomness, leaving gaps where cherished recollections once lived. Sometimes, she could remember her wedding day in vivid detail, but couldn't recall what she had eaten for breakfast. Other days, she would recognize Jessica immediately, but call her by her mother's name, temporarily forgetting that her beloved daughter had died in a car accident 15 years ago. "Family Feud," Eleanor repeated slowly, as if testing the words to see if they would unlock the proper memory. "With that nice man, the one with the mustache, who makes everyone laugh? Steve Harvey, Grandma." "That's right," Jessica smiled, though her heart ached at how much effort it took her grandmother to remember something they had discussed every day for the past 2 weeks. The Family Feud opportunity had emerged from Jessica's desperate search for ways to bring joy back into Eleanor's life during what everyone understood were likely her final years of meaningful engagement with the world. At 22, Jessica had made the difficult decision to put her graduate school plans on hold and move in with her grandmother when Eleanor's condition had progressed to the point where living alone was no longer safe. Eleanor had raised Jessica after her parents died in a car accident when she was 7, stepping seamlessly into the role of primary parent despite being in her early 60s. Eleanor had never complained about the sudden responsibility, had never made Jessica feel like a burden, and had somehow managed to provide all the love, stability, and guidance that a grieving child needed. Now the roles were reversed, and Jessica was determined to provide Eleanor with the same unconditional love and patient care that she had received. But caring for someone with Alzheimer's presented challenges that went far beyond practical difficulties. The hardest part was watching her grandmother disappear gradually, piece by piece, while her physical body remained healthy and present. Jessica had noticed that certain television shows seemed to reach Eleanor in ways that regular conversation sometimes couldn't. Family Feud was one of Eleanor's favorites, and even on her most confused days, she would perk up when Steve Harvey appeared on screen. Something about his warmth, his genuine care for the families, and his infectious laughter seemed to penetrate the fog that Alzheimer's had created around Eleanor's mind. The idea to apply for the show had been both inspiration and desperation. Jessica knew that Eleanor's condition would continue to deteriorate, following the cruel trajectory that Alzheimer's disease inflicts on families everywhere. Jessica wanted to create one final magical memory before her grandmother's ability to participate meaningfully in such experience disappeared entirely. The application process had been emotionally draining. Jessica had to explain Eleanor's diagnosis to the casting directors, providing medical documentation and assurances about her grandmother's ability to participate safely. The producers had been hesitant, concerned about the unpredictability of having someone with dementia on live television. But Jessica's passionate plea about giving her grandmother one last moment of joy, one final opportunity to be seen as Eleanor Williams, the person, rather than Eleanor Williams, the Alzheimer's patient, had ultimately convinced them to take the risk. The preparation for the show had been challenging, but also surprisingly therapeutic. Jessica had spent hours each day reviewing potential survey answers with Eleanor, using the practice sessions as cognitive therapy that seemed to engage parts of her grandmother's mind that had been dormant for months. Eleanor's competitive spirit, the same drive that had helped her raise 3 children as a single mother after her husband died young, would emerge during their practice sessions, and for brief moments, Jessica could see flashes of the formidable woman her grandmother had always been. But Alzheimer's is a cruel and unpredictable disease. Some days, Eleanor was sharp and engaged, easily remembering Family Feud strategies and offering clever answers to practice questions. Other days, she would forget they were going to be on television at all, or become confused about where they were and why Jessica was asking her strange questions. The flight to Atlanta had been particularly challenging, representing Eleanor's first time in an unfamiliar environment since her diagnosis had progressed to its current level. Eleanor had become disoriented in the airport, overwhelmed by the crowds, noise, and unfamiliar layout. During the 2-hour flight, Eleanor had asked Jessica 3 times why they were on an airplane, and each time Jessica had patiently explained their destination and purpose, watching her grandmother's face light up with excitement, as if hearing the news for the first time. Now, sitting in the Family Feud green room, Eleanor was having what Jessica had learned to recognize as a good moment, a period of clarity, when her grandmother's personality shone through the confusion with startling brightness. She was chatting with the other family members, sharing stories about her late husband, and asking thoughtful questions about their lives and families. The Williams family team consisted of Eleanor, Jessica, Eleanor's son David, Jessica's uncle, his wife Margaret, and their teenage son Tyler. David had been skeptical about including his mother in the show, worried that the stress and unfamiliar environment might trigger increased confusion or anxiety. But he had ultimately agreed when he saw how excited Eleanor became during their practice sessions and how the preparation seemed to give her a sense of purpose that had been missing from her daily routine. Steve Harvey's pre-show meeting with the families was part of his standard routine, but something about Eleanor immediately caught his attention. There was a quality to her presence, a combination of fragility and strength that reminded him of his own grandmother, a woman who had been the cornerstone of his childhood and the source of wisdom that had guided him through his most challenging moments. "Mrs. Williams," Steve said, crouching down to Eleanor's eye level as she sat in her chair. "I understand you're a big fan of the show. What's your secret to being such a great Family Feud viewer?" Eleanor's face lit up with a smile that transformed her features, making her look decades younger. "I love watching families work together," she said, her voice strong and clear. "It reminds me of Sunday dinners when my children were young. Everyone talking at once, trying to solve problems, supporting each other. That's what family is supposed to be." Steve was struck by the eloquence of her answer and the obvious depth of love behind her words. He spent several more minutes chatting with Eleanor, and Jessica watched with amazement as her grandmother engaged in conversation with the confidence and charm that had once made her the center of every social gathering. But as they moved from the green room to the studio floor, Eleanor began to show signs of confusion. The bright lights, the crowd noise, and the unfamiliar environment seemed to overwhelm her, and Jessica could see the anxiety building in her grandmother's expression. "Where are we?" Eleanor whispered to Jessica as they took their positions at the family podium. "We're on Family Feud, Grandma. Remember, we're going to play a game with Steve Harvey, the nice man with the mustache." "Oh," Eleanor said, but Jessica could tell that her grandmother was struggling to connect the explanation with their current reality. The opposing family, the Rodriguez clan from Phoenix, were energetic and clearly excited to be there. They high-fived each other, waved to the audience, and demonstrated the kind of television-ready enthusiasm that made for great entertainment. The contrast with the Williams family's more subdued energy was noticeable, though not necessarily in a negative way. When Steve Harvey bounded onto the stage with his characteristic energy, the studio came alive with applause and cheering, but Eleanor seemed startled by the sudden noise, and Jessica gently took her grandmother's hand, offering reassurance through physical connection. "Good afternoon, families," Steve announced, his voice carrying across the studio with practiced authority. "Are you ready to play Family Feud?" The Rodriguez family responded with enthusiasm, but Eleanor looked around in confusion, clearly overwhelmed by the chaos of sounds and activity surrounding her. During the family introductions, Steve approached each member of the Williams family with his usual warmth and humor. He joked with David about his job as an accountant, complimented Margaret on her teaching career, and engaged Tyler in conversation about his plans for college. But when he reached Eleanor, he seemed to sense that she needed a different approach. "And this lovely lady must be the family matriarch," Steve said, his voice gentler than it had been with the other family members. "Mrs. Eleanor Williams, how are you doing today?" Eleanor looked up at Steve with an expression that mixed recognition with uncertainty. Are you the man from the television?" "Yes, ma'am, I am. I'm Steve Harvey, and I'm honored to have you on my show today." "You seem like a very nice man," Eleanor said simply. "Do I know you?" The question wasn't asked with embarrassment or self-consciousness. Eleanor's dementia had progressed to the point where she sometimes couldn't distinguish between people she had actually met and those she had only seen on television or in photographs. Emma photographs, Steve, understanding intuitively that this was a special situation, responded with gentle kindness. "We're getting to know each other right now, Mrs. Williams, and I can already tell that you're a very special lady." The game began with the familiar energy and excitement that made Family Feud America's favorite family game show. The first question was straightforward. Name something people do when they're nervous. The Rodriguez family won the face-off and chose to play, rattling off answers with practiced efficiency. Bite their nails, pace, fidget, sweat, stutter. They dominated the round and built an early lead. During the second round, it was the Williams family's turn to play. The question was, name something people collect. And Jessica went first, confidently answering stamps. It was on the board as the number 4 answer. David followed with coins, also on the board. Margaret said antiques, which earned them another point. Then it was Tyler's turn, and he confidently said baseball cards, which was revealed as the number 2 answer. The family was doing well, building momentum and gaining confidence, but when it came time for Eleanor to answer, everything changed. Steve approached Eleanor's position at the podium, microphone in hand, his expression showing the careful attention he paid to contestants who might need extra support. "Mrs. Eleanor," he said gently, "we need something people collect. What do you think?" Eleanor looked at Steve with an expression that seemed to be searching for something just beyond her reach. Several seconds passed, and Jessica could see her grandmother struggling to understand the question or access the part of her memory where answers might be stored. "I collect," Eleanor began, then stopped, clearly frustrated by her inability to complete the thought. Steve waited patiently, not rushing her or showing any sign of impatience. The studio audience, sensing something was different about this interaction, had quieted down significantly. "Take your time, Mrs. Eleanor. There's no rush." Eleanor looked around the studio, then at her family, then back at Steve. When she spoke, her voice was uncertain but determined. "Memories?" she said simply. "I collect memories." The answer wasn't on the board. The survey had been looking for tangible objects that people collect, but something about Eleanor's response, the way she had struggled to find it, and the profound truth it contained, created a moment that transcended the game itself. Steve looked from Eleanor to Jessica, and he began to understand what was happening. This wasn't just a grandmother having trouble with a game show question. This was someone fighting to hold on to the most important things in her life, even as a disease tried to take them away. The game continued, but Steve found himself paying special attention to Eleanor. He noticed how Jessica would gently prompt her grandmother when she seemed confused, how David would lean over to whisper explanations when Eleanor lost track of what was happening, how the entire family formed a protective circle of love and support around their matriarch. During the third round, Eleanor had another turn to answer. The question was, name something that gets better with age. This time, she responded quickly and confidently. Love, she said. It was the #1 answer on the board, and the Williams family erupted in celebration. For a moment, Eleanor seemed fully present and engaged, basking in the joy of her family's excitement. But it was during the 4th round that the moment everyone would remember forever finally arrived. The category was name, something old people are likely to forget, and the question fell to Eleanor. Steve walked over to the family podium, positioned himself directly in front of Eleanor, and spoke with the gentle respect that had characterized all his interactions with her. Mrs. Eleanor, we need something that old people are likely to forget. What do you think? Eleanor looked at Steve with eyes that suddenly seemed completely clear and focused. For a moment, the confusion that had clouded her expression throughout most of the show lifted, and Jessica could see her grandmother, the real Eleanor, the woman who had been hidden behind the disease, shining through. When Eleanor spoke, her voice was strong and certain, carrying across the studio with the kind of clarity that comes from absolute truth. How much they love their families, she said. The words hit the studio like a physical force. This wasn't a typical Family Feud answer. This was the response of a woman who was living with the daily fear of losing her memories, of forgetting the people who meant everything to her, of having a disease steal away the love that had defined her entire life. Steve Harvey, a man who had heard thousands of answers over his years of hosting, stopped moving entirely. The studio audience fell silent as they processed not just the words, but the weight of meaning behind them. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was a window into the heart of someone fighting the most devastating battle imaginable, the battle to remember love. Steve looked from Eleanor to Jessica, who was openly crying, to David, whose face showed the pain of watching his mother struggle with a disease that was stealing her essence. The cameras kept rolling, but everyone in the studio understood that they were witnessing something far more important than a game show. Mrs. Eleanor, Steve said, his voice thick with emotion, that's not just a good answer, that's the truth. He set his microphone down on the podium and walked directly to Eleanor. What happened next would be replayed millions of times on social media, discussed in nursing homes and medical conferences, and remembered as one of the most powerful moments in television history. Steve knelt down beside Eleanor's chair and took her hands in his. Can I tell you something, Mrs. Williams? I want you to listen to me very carefully. Eleanor nodded, her eyes locked on Steve's face with complete attention. You may forget a lot of things, Steve said, his voice gentle but strong enough to carry across the silent studio. You may forget names and dates and places, but there's one thing I want you to know that you will never, ever forget, and that's how much your family loves you. He gestured to Jessica, David, Margaret, and Tyler, who had gathered around Eleanor's chair. Look at these people. Look at how they're looking at you right now. That love you see in their eyes, that's not something that can be forgotten or taken away by any disease. That love lives in here. He placed his hand gently over Eleanor's heart, and here he touched her forehead softly, and it's stronger than anything that tries to take it away. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, but her expression was one of profound peace and recognition. I know, she whispered. I know they love me, and I love them so much it hurts. That's right, Steve said, his own tears now flowing freely. And that love is going to be there tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day for the rest of your life. Because real love doesn't live in memory, Mrs. Williams. Real love lives in the heart, and hearts don't forget. The studio erupted in applause, but it wasn't the typical game show cheering. This was the sound of people recognizing something sacred, something that connected them to their own experiences of love, loss, and family. Many audience members were openly crying, and even the camera operators and production staff were visibly moved by what they were witnessing. Steve stood up and addressed the entire studio. Ladies and gentlemen, we just learned something important here today. We learned that some things are more important than points and prizes. We learned that love is the only thing that really matters. And we learned it from this incredible woman who just reminded us all what it means to hold on to what's precious. He turned back to Eleanor, who was surrounded by her family in a circle of embraces and tears. Mrs. Eleanor, I want you to have something. Steve began removing his suit jacket, the same navy blue jacket that had become part of his television persona. As he draped it around Eleanor's shoulders, he continued speaking. "This jacket has been with me through every show I've ever hosted. It's been part of celebrations and disappointments, victories and defeats. But today, it's going home with someone who taught me that the most important victories happen when families love each other through the hardest times." Eleanor looked down at the jacket, then back up at Steve. In a moment of complete clarity that seemed to surprise even her family, she said, "Thank you for reminding me that I'm still me, even when I forget who that is sometimes." The episode aired 6 weeks later and became the most watched Family Feud episode in the show's history. But more importantly, it sparked a national conversation about Alzheimer's disease, elder care, and the power of family love to provide dignity and comfort in the face of devastating illness. The response from viewers was overwhelming and deeply personal. Families dealing with Alzheimer's wrote to share how Eleanor's appearance had given them hope and perspective. Medical professionals praised the show for presenting dementia with dignity rather than pity. Alzheimer's advocacy organizations reported increases in donations and volunteer applications in the weeks following the episode. Steve Harvey, who had built a career on making people laugh, learned something profound about the difference between entertainment and meaning. In interviews afterward, he said, "Mrs. Eleanor taught me that sometimes the most important moments in television happen when we stop trying to be funny and start trying to be human. She reminded me that every person who walks onto that stage has a story worth telling and love worth celebrating." The Williams family used their winnings to help cover the costs of Eleanor's care, but the real prize was something money couldn't buy. The experience had given Eleanor a moment of pure joy and recognition, a memory that she would carry for as long as her mind allowed her to carry memories at all. 6 months after the episode aired, Eleanor's condition had progressed significantly. She no longer recognized most people, including family members, on many days. But Jessica noticed something remarkable. Whenever they watched the Family Feud episode together, Eleanor would smile with recognition when Steve Harvey appeared on screen. She couldn't remember his name or explain why he seemed familiar, but something about his presence brought her comfort and peace. The jacket Steve gave Eleanor hangs in Jessica's closet now, a tangible reminder of the day when television became something more than entertainment. Jessica wears it to important family events and medical appointments, carrying with her the memory of a moment when her grandmother was seen, understood, and celebrated for who she was rather than defined by what she was losing. Eleanor Williams passed away peacefully 18 months after the Family Feud episode aired, surrounded by the family who had never stopped loving her and never stopped believing that she was worthy of dignity, respect, and joy. At her memorial service, the pastor read the quote that had become Eleanor's legacy: "Love doesn't live in memory, love lives in the heart, and hearts don't forget." Steve Harvey attended the memorial service, surprising the family with his presence and his words. "Mrs. Eleanor taught me that some people are teachers even when they're struggling to remember their lessons. She showed us all what it means to love someone not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. Because sometimes the most powerful moments happen when we're forced to remember what really matters. And sometimes a grandmother's love really is stronger than any disease that tries to steal it away." Eleanor Williams proved that love transcends memory, that dignity can shine through confusion, and that the most important things we collect in life aren't objects at all. They're the moments when we choose to see the humanity in each other, especially when that humanity is threatened by forces beyond our control. The memory keeper had taught them all that some things are too precious to forget, and some people are too valuable to be defined by what they can't remember. In a world that often dismisses and warehouses people with dementia, Eleanor Williams had shown that every person, regardless of their cognitive abilities, deserves to be celebrated for the love they have given and the impact they have made on the hearts of those who know them.